The Timeline is a Blue Wire podcast. Welcome to The Timeline, a Phoenix Suns podcast. My name is Mike, here with Sam. How you doing, Sam?
Hey, man. I'm doing all right. We all float on. Just like the Suns, who are sort of floating on with a lot of guys out at the moment, but doing their best, as we saw in a really weird doubleheader over the weekend between the Magic and the Blazers.
It was really, I'm going to be honest, two kind of brutal games to watch, although the Orlando one, obviously much, much better, was still an incredibly frustrating game. Specifically for the Suns, it probably felt a little more fun for Orlando, who kept their fans, they kept chipping their way back into the game and sent it to double overtime, but had a much, much, much more exciting ending in that Orlando game. Those two games are rough. Back-to-back already. That Portland game was going to be a disaster. I ended up going to the game and watching it live because it was just, well, it was free for me to get in. Somebody gave me a ticket, and I was like, I'll go. I know it's going to suck.
Wait. The Orlando game?
The Portland game.
Oh, the Portland game. Oh, okay.
In fact, I will say
this. The Orlando game. That would have been crazy.
I have a friend who will give me season tickets to games they cannot go to or cannot sell. So I've seen quite a bit of bad basketball on those games because the ones that don't sell are the ones where everyone's out. Like everyone knows that they're going to be out. Devin Booker, Grayson Allen ended up being out in this one. Dillon Brooks. I mean, it's the real news for the Suns right now. I think overall is Dillon Brooks' broken hand at this point, right? That's the one getting the Shams Charania tweets.
I guess, but does it feel that way if you're a Suns fan don't get me wrong, Dillon Brooks has had a very outsized impact on the team compared to maybe even what we expected from him. He's had a great season. But to me, the story has just been all of the injuries combined, the effect of all of them together, more so than... And you're right. Okay, here's why it's important. Because Dillon Brooks broke his left hand, correct? And also just doesn't make sense. This is me nitpicking, but there are a lot of bones in your hands. I would like to know what he broke in his hand personally, because
it wasn't get that hand surgeon back on.
It wasn't his entire hand. I'll tell you that much.
How many people listening to this remember when we had a hand surgeon on? You think 60 people?
I don't even remember. I remember him being on, but I don't even remember what we were talking about.
Devin Booker broke his hand right before, I believe, the 18-19 season. If I'm not mistaken.
That's crazy. That's a very long time ago. Yeah, and you can't ask me to remember things from 8 years ago. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and we had a hand surgeon on to talk about it.
So Dillon Brooks is out for 4 to 6 weeks. I think the Jordan Goodwin injury is more impactful, maybe. for
this
as
is
long
the most
as,
Ryan Russillo you've ever sounded.
I could definitely. I've had more Ryan Russillo takes in the past. Jordan Goodwin has a calf strain. Okay, that I think some people were freaking out when they saw it happen, also in the Orlando game, thinking that for a second was maybe an Achilles tear or something else, right? That it was the bad one. He immediately sprinted actually all the way to the locker room, and they're just calling it a calf strain. And have we gotten any updates besides that? Just that
no timetable right now, which is concerning. Yeah. I mean, calf injuries are like the entire NBA has been plagued by calf injuries this year. It's been sort of a more common thing than a normal season. Giannis is out with a calf injury right now and has had multiple in the past few seasons for him. And it's just one of those injuries, I think, with the way the NBA is played now, with the amount of movement it requires and the types of movements it requires. I think calf injuries have just been more common. You have to be really careful with calf injuries. There's been multiple times where players have played through a calf injury and tore their Achilles. There's no direct evidence linking calf injuries to Achilles injuries, but it happened twice in the last 2 seasons in the NBA Finals, or in the playoffs at least. And, that's circumstantial evidence at best, but it seems to be something that just hasn't been studied yet. And it seems like that's something that could happen. So you have to be very careful with calf injuries. But it really sucks, for Dillon Brooks and for Jordan Goodwin, because they're just so necessary to the team's culture. It's not to say that they can't sustain that culture without those guys playing. It's just that the culture ultimately happens on the court. As much as you want to say it can happen off the court, it has to happen on the court. And the attitude that both of those guys bring while they're playing, it's just so vital. And, for Dillon Brooks, we know what he's done this season. There's the scoring, there's the defense. He guards bigger guys. They don't have a lot of guys who can do that. And for Jordan Goodwin, he maximizes the amount of possessions the Suns have with offensive rebounds, with steals, deflections. And, he's just really, really good at giving the Suns extra opportunities. And for a team that's not the most efficient team, the Suns, those extra opportunities are really, really important. And without him, they're going to struggle to do that in the same way.
Yeah, and then just you roll into a game like the game against Portland, and you're missing 60 points per game at this point because Booker and Grayson did not play. Dillon Brooks, obviously, out. To be missing 60 points per game and Jordan Goodwin, you're like, do the little things, set the culture guy. At a certain point, it's just, I know Avdia left the game with 2 minutes in or whatever, but it was just too much to overcome. Really one of the ugliest games I've seen from the Suns since, 2019.
Yeah, right? What did they score? 77?
Or 70, yeah.
77, I think, yeah.
So, yeah, sure. It was just an atrocious watch. A couple guys did their best. Con Gillespie went out there, hit a bunch of threes to try and keep them in it. But
the first three,
really tough.
The first three that anyone made in the game for the Suns was Kaman Malawach in the second quarter after the Suns went 0 for 10 from three. Who would have guessed that that would be what happens in that game? Bizarre shooting game. It's really, without Devin Booker and even with Jalen Green, we'll talk about him, but without Devin Booker specifically, the offense is so, just so dependent on the threes going in that when they don't, they can have a game like this where it's 77 points scored, one of the worst scoring games the Suns have had in years.
Yeah, and guys like Royce, right? Like if he's firing up a lot of threes and Royce at this point is shooting threes with no conscience, which I guess in games like this he has every right to do, but it can get really ugly really fast and kind of just the offense looking like it has no flow because you just have a bunch of role players kind of not knowing what to do. So they have a couple of really tough games coming up between Boston and then the Lakers. And I don't know how many guys they're going to have back. Hopefully, we don't know at this point. Hopefully Grayson is back for at least one of those two games.
Yeah.
And then we'll wait and see on Jordan Goodwin. But the schedule does get easier next week, substantially easier. But they have to battle through it a little bit more first.
Devin Booker will be out at least a few more games, most likely. Grayson Allen is currently listed as questionable tomorrow. We know for Dillon Brooks, it will probably be close to 6 weeks. They said 4 to 6 weeks, Gambo said. I'm guessing that it will be 6 weeks. He did get surgery or will be getting surgery on his hand, so a recovery time of 4 weeks seems unlikely. I'm guessing that time frame of 4 to 6 weeks is 6 weeks. 6 weeks, of course, takes us into April, which is the last month of the season. So, and there's only, games until the 15th or so. So, we're going to get Dillon Brooks back, assuming the Suns are in the play-in, which it seems likely at this point. Yeah, there's a possibility they could still somehow get their way into the 6th seed, just based on a team performing poorly above them. But it seems likely they will be in the play-in. And if you do get Dillon Brooks back, it'll be right before the play-in, most likely. Unless he somehow miraculously comes back a few weeks before that, which is still possible based on Gambo's timeline. But it does suck to see him out. And then, Jordan Goodwin, we're hoping to find out soon. There will probably be, generally there's an update within a few days. So I'm guessing we'll probably hear something by tomorrow or the next day about Jordan Goodwin.
We haven't even made the joke yet, but those are their only two power forwards, right? So there's going to be ample opportunity. I don't know if he's going to come up again in this podcast. We're going to do a stats episode here this week. So I guess in case he doesn't come up again, I'll just say it here. Ample opportunity for Rasheer Fleming over the next 4 to 6 weeks.
Right.
Ample opportunity.
We should talk about him and Malawach. Yeah, but yes.
Well, I wasn't sure if you had any stats on either of those guys.
Either.
Personally,
yeah.
I don't. So if you want to take a minute here to just point out the fact that Malawach and Rasheer have played more recently,
they played in the second quarter. You know, like they had minutes in like a consequential game.
For Fleming, we've seen that before.
Yeah, it's true.
For Malawach, it was maybe the first time, like really the first time he was playing actual minutes where you could really get a feel for what he was doing outside of just garbage time. And honestly, pretty solid, right? Like, what'd you think of Kaman Malawach yesterday?
It's hard to complain about anything he did in that game. I don't think that he was bad. You know, I think he defensively struggles to be in the right place at the right time. But he hit a 3. I think he had 1 dunk too, right?
Yeah,
and he was getting some rebounds. I think he could be a little better at rebounding and defense. Offensively, I don't know. There's just a lot of work, but he did look like an NBA player, which at times he doesn't. So
those two guys had the best plus minus on the team yesterday, right? Like substantial. They outscored Portland when Malawach was on the floor. Also, by the way, they tried Oso at power forward alongside Malawach at center for a few minutes.
There's 2 interesting things that happened in those minutes, right? I think they started out switching everything, including Malawach, meaning if it was like a Oso Malawach screen, which happened because they were putting Oso like on Scoot. Like they were putting Oso on like perimeter guys because they can really count on him to do that, which by the way, the lack of perimeter defense for this team is going to be rough too without Jordan Goodwin and Dillon Brooks as well. Ryan Dunn needs to... This is when we need him to find his groove more than anything because you're out there putting Oso on the perimeter guys because you have to. They don't have other guys who can do anything against them. But then they eventually changed that and Malawach was in more of a drop, and especially in the second half. But at first I was like, this is really kind of interesting, just relying on Oso to be the help defender if Malawach switches onto a perimeter guy, and then Malawach was playing up high, and they're sort of testing his feet in that scenario. And yeah, it didn't look that bad, actually. You know, if he can hit a 3, which he did on the first time he caught the ball behind the 3-point line, then that lineup has some potential to work and could be a lineup that provides a lot of rebounding and defense.
I liked it. I liked
it a lot. We asked for it before the season started. That was one thing that we thought could work.
Yeah, and Rasheer too. You know, I didn't really do much offensively, but although I do think he also hit a couple threes, didn't he?
I think he had 1 3. He
Maybe
also,
just had 1.
You know, it is kind of interesting to see him in the corner guy role. The Suns do the thing where the corners come out to the dribble handoffs, which means the guys who catch the ball there either have to shoot, which most of them don't. Really, just Grayson Allen and Colin Gillespie or Devin Booker shoot off of that action. Or they have to at least attempt to drive off of the screen. And there was one play I remember where Rasheer came off of that action, got into maybe 1 foot over the free throw line into the paint, and then swung it out to like a driving kick. He did like a driving kick. He swung it out to a guy that was on the perimeter, and they swung it a few times, probably missed the shot at the end of it. But seeing him with the speed that he has, because he's fast for his size especially, to get 1 foot into the paint and swing it out to a perimeter defender in kind of a nice pass, I was actually really happy to see that. That's the kind of things that in order for him to be effective on offense, it can't just be catch and shoot 3-point shooting or shots at the rim. The 3-point shooting isn't good enough for that to be enough to sustain him. Like, it's not fast. He swings the ball out in front of him. If it's contested at all, it's going to be easy to block. And the dunks at the rim just aren't going to come very easy because dunks at the rim don't come very easy for anyone. So he has to do other things. And to see a little bit of that, I think, was really nice to see. I hope that that's something that develops.
Yeah, for sure. If he does end up playing some more minutes at power forward, I'm sure we'll see him more as a screener as the season progresses. But yeah, he needs to develop other skills to stay on the floor, for sure. It's not too hard to beat out his competition right now, though, as we might touch on, because his competition is Ryan Dunn and Isaiah Livers, and sheesh.
Rough night for those two guys, man.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll see what Rasheer can do for the next month. Are you ready to get into some stats?
Hold on, let's stay on it for a little bit longer. Ryan Dunn did start. Do you have Ryan Dunn stats? Because we can hold on to that if you do.
I do.
Okay, well, let's hold on to that. But also, what did you think of Malewich? I just wanted to get your thoughts on him too, on him playing.
No, I really liked it. I mean, what you mentioned specifically, the fact that they came out willing to even try switching him. Well, here's what I don't remember off the top of my head. Was he not matching, but was it Klingon in those minutes, or who was on the floor for the Blazers?
Klingon was in for part of that.
Klingon was kind of killing us. I'm not going to lie.
He has all season. We'll talk about Mark Williams, but Klingon has been one of those centers that just kind of destroys the Suns for whatever reason. Oh, first of all, he's good. I mean, we'll start there. There's a reason they bought out DeAndre, and they had faith in Donovan Klingon to be like a starting center this season, and he has been good in that role. But for whatever reason, he's just one of those guys that plays the Suns really, really, really well.
In any case, I was encouraged. Even the Blazers' backup center is Robert Williams the third, who's a real player, right? So I'm just encouraged to see Malewich go up against real guys in the first or second units and play some minutes that aren't garbage time. I thought he held up well. He runs the floor really hard every time. Also, he got called for a moving screen that the Suns challenged on. That was just
garbage.
An absurd call, right? I have no idea. I understand that call is going to go against rookies a lot of the time, the offensive fouls, but it's frustratingly reputation-based, it feels like, especially because that every possession out there, Malewich is going to have to set multiple screens. It's something that he just needs to keep his confidence high on because he's going to be doing it all the time. He needs to build out that skill set if he wants to survive, and I just don't see how that one call in particular was an offensive foul, but I guess it happens.
Yeah. If you care about coffee and how it's made, check out Alchemy Roast. They roast in small batches and source their beans responsibly, focusing on flavor instead of mass production. The result is coffee that's balanced, well-developed, and easy to drink, whether you brew at home every day or just want something better than grocery store coffee. You can order online at alchemyroaster.com, and if you use the promo code TIMELINE at checkout, you'll get 10% off your order. Go now to alchemyroaster.com, my favorite coffee, and use the promo code TIMELINE at checkout. Get 10% off. Support a local Phoenix business and get the best coffee you can buy.
Big thanks to our sponsor, BetterHelp, for partnering with us for this important conversation about mental health.
This is Steve Smith here, former NFL wide receiver and host of the 89 show on YouTube. So having a counselor and working with BetterHelp, that gives you an opportunity to really start to unpack. But people don't understand, when you unpack things, you also open up a box that you're not always sure what's inside. So I think that's why seeing a professional is extremely important. If you need someone to open up to, visit BetterHelp. That's betterhelp.com/89 to get started.
All right, let's talk about stats. So we do this every few games. I think we got out of the habit of it a little bit this season, actually. But Sam and I separately came up with some stats that we found interesting, something to represent where the Suns are at this point of the season. I found less than you. We talked about it ahead of time. So I'm going to let you go first. Yeah, I mean, half the time I get extra. And this time I really only found 3 that I found really kind of interesting, although I have some sort of stats around those that are relevant to it. So I'm going to let you go first, and you can choose any one of them. We haven't talked about these ahead of time. So yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I'm going to start by reusing one that I put on Twitter today, so I apologize if you've seen my Twitter feed recently, but it's just been top of mind for me lately because I can't stop myself from thinking about the future, I guess. And so anytime
we're a Suns podcast, we kind of have to.
Anytime a guy is about to be a free agent, as fun as this season has been, we're only 25 games away from free agency realistically. And Mark Williams has a big contract extension coming up. So I put out there that Mark Williams is now allowing opponents to shoot 65.5% within 6 feet of the basket this season. And I pointed out on Twitter this morning that out of 38 centers in the league who have guarded at least 200 of those shots, Out of those 38, Mark Williams ranks 35th. I don't remember off the top of my head who the 3 guys below him were. I want to say it was like Kyle Filipowski, and I really don't remember who the other 2 guys were, but not good in any case, right? 35th out of 38. I also just wanted to keep this, like, put this in perspective in a way that Suns fans might understand, so I brought up the starting center numbers for the Suns in each of the past 5 seasons in this stat, just to give us some context. Let me know if any of these numbers surprise you, by the way. Mm-hmm. So Mark Williams, 65.5%, almost 66% inside of 6 feet.
Really bad. Like,
that's
for those
really
who don't
bad
understand
at
that's
point.
really bad. That means that a lot of players are shooting over their average when they're going against him at the rim.
I don't know the exact average in the league, but I want to say the average is around 62, 63.
Yeah.
Here are the Suns' numbers for the last 5 years for their starting centers. Last year, I know they didn't really have a real starting center because they were kind of switching around, but the guy who guarded the most attempts inside of 6 feet was Nick Richards. Nick Richards allowed 60% last season. The season before that, the Frank Vogel year, Jusuf Nurkic, we talked about it, how he had kind of surprisingly a good defensive first year on the Suns. He was at 55% in this stat, Jusuf Nurkic, 2 years ago. And then, of course, if you go back before that, it was DeAndre Ayton for 3 seasons, and in classic DeAndre Ayton fashion, was sort of just a case of he was really good until he wasn't. So the season the Suns went to the finals, 2020, 2021, DeAndre Ayton held opponents to 56% inside of 6 feet. The season after that, when they set the franchise win record, he was still at 58%, still good, still above average. Not like, elite in either of those seasons. Like, again, Gobert levels or, Chet or Wemby levels. Like, those tend to be, the elite guys tend to be around like 50% in this stat. But Ayton, once upon a time, was really good. He was 56 in the finals, 58 the season after that. Then the season Kevin Durant arrives and Ayton stops carrying entirely. He falls to 62%. And that's where he bottomed out before he got out of here. For Mark Williams to be below that at 66 is definitely concerning. Oso Ighodaro, because I'm sure people are wondering.
I was going to ask that, yeah. I have it too, in case you didn't, but yeah.
Oso is at 56% in this stat.
Very, very good. And remind you,
he has been very good.
Just a reminder, Oso's like 5 inches shorter than him. Like, he's legitimately shorter.
And I think people are going to go... Well, okay, first of all, I would just say, if you're a Suns fan who watches every game, I would think this passes the eye test for you. This passed the eye test for me, unfortunately. Because it just feels like Mark Williams is always putting a hand up to contest if guys get close to the basket and never gets a hand on it.
Well, also,
it's like
I think
always half a second late.
Okay, so I also think that defense is played first with your feet. People are probably tired of hearing me say that on this podcast, but I talk about it all the time. It's your feet first, right? It's not just where you jump up and swing at the ball, right? You have to be in the right position to play defense. He's often just too deep under the rim, or just not complete, or just like completely out of position defensively. But when he's in the right place, meaning the defense is sort of funneling it into him, he's not high enough in order to stop the drive. He's too deep in the paint, giving perimeter players too much room to get the shot off if he jumps at it, which is a little frustrating. Now, when we had the Charlotte podcaster, forgive me, I forget his name, on to talk about Mark Williams post-trade, he said that he often jumps too much at the ball. I actually don't think he's been doing that too much this season. He's not out there like on a pogo stick and then getting beat at the rim because he's jumping.
Ironically, Nick Richards was doing that a lot.
Yes, exactly. He's just out of position. I think Malawach does that too. He kind of jumps at everything, including he tried to block a 3-point shot from like a mile away yesterday.
Couple things.
And I have more on this because I have 2 stats related to this, related to Mark Williams, and because I want to stick on this for a while. I think it's worth talking about.
Yeah, well, and so, okay, it's top of mind for us because what's the future of this team? It's a big summer coming up with Mark Williams being a free agent, Colin Gillespie being a free agent, Jordan Goodwin being a free agent. Am I missing anyone? Those are the big 3, right?
Yeah, I think you're right, yeah.
I mean, other guys obviously are having their contracts expire, but those are the big three that I
Dillon
think everyone
Brooks
agrees.
Is extension eligible next year?
Extension eligible,
matters, but his contract is still under contract next year, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there's the same level of urgency with Dillon Brooks. He's under contract next year.
You also don't have to extend him, yeah.
Those three guys I mentioned, Williams, Gillespie, Goodwin, everyone can agree that whatever order you kind of rank them in, those have been three of the 6 most important players for the Suns this year, right? You need to bring all 3 of them back. I do think that. The exact value and, how you kind of want to finagle money towards some guys and away from others in order to maybe dodge the aprons and I don't know if they're going to be able to dodge the tax, or they're probably going to be in the tax, but to dodge the aprons it's going to be close. It's going to be close.
So
the way that Mark Williams is playing right now, because he continues to be very important, he always runs hard, his offense is real, his finishing talent is real. And if you just replaced him with 20 minutes of some other random center, you wouldn't just necessarily be able to replace that.
We know that's true because we saw it with Nick Richards, right? Yeah.
Exactly. They tried to do it with Nick Richards, and Nick Richards sucks ass on both ends, and Mark Williams is really good on offense. So I definitely think you need to try and keep this guy, but this is not... If he was thinking that he could get the $20 million a year contract extension...
Or more.
That would kind of put him in the Zubats tier.
Starting center money is $30 million,
No, it's not.
Yeah, I mean that's what Jakob Poeltl makes.
No, that's not. Jakob Poeltl makes 20 something, but also that's star center is $30 million a year. There are lots of starting centers who are at 20. My point is, I don't even think Mark Williams is playing a 20 million guy right now. I think he's closer to 15. And if we looked at some contracts around the league, we could maybe do a little compare and contrast. Guys who are closer to the 15 to 16 a year range, Daniel Gafford, Onyeka Okongwu. I think Mark Williams is closer to that tier of guys right now than he is to the Jakob Poeltls, the Zubats, who are closer to 20 million. Personally,
I mean, I don't even think Okongwu's been better than him this year. Just Okongwu, because he shoots threes, just provides an interesting dynamic to an offense for someone who can still theoretically protect the rim. But, okay, I'm going to get back to him, his contract. We'll talk about that more in a second. But let's talk a little bit about the stat I have related to him. A lot of people hear the stat about Mark Williams and his rim protection, and they blame it on Royce O'Neal and Dillon Brooks. Because there's a stat going around that we've talked about on this podcast that puts Royce O'Neal and Dillon Brooks in the top 10 in the NBA in blow-by percentage, so getting blown by the offensive player that you're guarding. Now, we've learned context to that. Sometimes it's with a screen, but the majority of the time it's without a screen, up to 75% of the time. It's just without a screen, you're getting blown by towards the rim. There is an element of funneling that is related to defense that comes with a screen, because it takes 2 players to funnel a player. So a defense called ice is where you funnel guys away from the center of the floor. So you line up on the screen at the middle of the floor, and you're forcing guys sort of baseline into a defender that's there waiting, and you're basically using 3 guys to defend a pick and roll in that way. The Suns do that, but this blow-by percentage is not really that. So what I did is I looked at the difference between when Dillon Brooks and Royce O'Neal are on the floor with Mark Williams compared to when Dillon Brooks and Royce O'Neal are on the floor with Oso Ighodaro, because I thought that would be a good way to compare the difference between when these 2 guys who are poor perimeter defenders so far this season by that one statistic, who maybe put a little more pressure on a center, and compare when each center is on the floor with them. So when Mark Williams shares the floor with Royce O'Neal and Dillon Brooks, the Suns have a 118.8 defensive rating. Now that is essentially equivalent or at about the level of the 28th best defensive team in the NBA.
Wait, I'm sorry. That's repeat for us. That's Mark and Royce and Brooks. That's all.
Mark, Royce, and Brooks. Yes. So when the 2 blow-by guys, the blow-by twins, if you will, are on the floor with Mark Williams, they're one of the worst defenses in the NBA. When Royce O'Neal and Dillon Brooks are on the floor with Oso Ighodaro, it's a 113.5 defensive rating, which is equivalent to the 13th best defensive rating in the NBA. So the difference is about 5 points per 100 possessions, which in the NBA is massive. It's the difference between the 28th defense and the 13th defense in the NBA. Now, it's not just, about whether or not Oso Ighodaro makes up the difference. It's a scheme thing too, because with Oso they switch everything, which makes it a little different schematically. So when Mark Williams is on the floor and you have guys getting blown by, and then you're there to recover at the rim, it is what it is. That's not what they're trying to do. Like Royce O'Neal and Dillon Brooks aren't trying to let guys run by them and then run them into Mark Williams, right? Because the only way that would make sense strategically is if Mark Williams was a good rim protector. He's not. If you got, Rudy Gobert down there, yeah, you can do that a little bit. You can trust Rudy Gobert to recover. Wembanyama, we saw how the Spurs overplay the three-point shot so that if you do drive, they know they have a guy who can stop you at the free throw line, basically. The Suns don't have that, right? So these guys are letting guys run by them, and the defense is really, really bad when he's on the floor with those two guys who, at this point, are still very important to the Suns offensively, Dillon Brooks and Royce O'Neal. Now, there has been a conversation about, and I think the context to Mark Williams matters, right? We are now in a stretch of games where he has played the most games in his NBA career. He's never played this much in an NBA season. Is he running into a wall? I don't know. He's been in the NBA for 4 years now, technically. But is there a rookie wall, if you will, here that's happening with him? I don't know. That's bad if it is,
but
right?
Yeah, right.
But the last 10 games, this is more context to the stats. This is technically still part of my first stat, even though I have another one here. The last 10 games, when Mark Williams is on the floor, the Suns have a net rating of minus 12.3. They have been, in the last 10 games, with him on the floor, awful. Like, genuinely awful. And with Oso on the floor, still not good. They've not been great in their last 10 games, but it's like more than 11 points per 100 possessions better with Oso on the floor. Now, I'm not entirely sure why this is happening. I will say when you look at some stats, like when Mark Williams is on the floor with Devin Booker, they're pretty good. But when Mark Williams is on the floor without Devin Booker, it's awful, like really bad. Now, that's comes on defense and on offense where it drops, without Devin Booker on the floor. So it's really, I don't know, contextually, if you're trying to contextualize those stats, it's hard to, just based on what we've seen in the game so far.
I think my theory there is it's just, obviously Devin Booker's going to juice anyone's offense to a certain extent. He's just going to make anyone look better compared to the other playmakers on this team. But the way that the Suns use Mark specifically, like, they don't use him, and plenty of people have complained about this, but they really don't use him much at all in a half-court context. So if Mark is, like, okay, some people have said their critique based on these rim protection numbers, right, has been, well, Mark needs to add strength back for next year because he's lost quite a bit of weight. I would push back on that. Like, I feel like he's in a good place by virtue of the fact that he's just this available in a way that he's never been. And probably part of that is because he lost the weight and it's allowed him to keep his conditioning in a place where he can play 25 minutes a game for most nights out of the season. And that's kind of all you can ask from him, if you ask me. But unless he's running the floor really hard in transition, which he does, and those possessions obviously aren't going to come either unless they're getting stops in the first place, there isn't really much of an effort made to involve Mark Williams on offense. So, like, if it's just going to come down to a game where Devin Booker is not playing and Jalen Green has the ball in his hands the most out of anyone, and then he's surrounded by a bunch of role players who can't really dribble, and Mark Williams, what is the offense, at least in the half court, kind of supposed to look like there? I'm just not really sure what their recipe to success is.
And there's no real high-level passing on this team.
There's no high-level passing, and there's
Devin
no
Booker is by far
attempt.
the best at it, but like outside of him, there's just none.
There's no honest attempt. So obviously their defense is worse, but also they could still be making a better effort to push off of makes, and they haven't been. That was one of my complaints with one of my stats, is that the pace for the Suns has been really bad. It's been in the gutter lately. They've been one of the slowest teams in the NBA. Some of that is just going to be a circumstance of, other teams are picking up pressure, ball handler pressure earlier in the shot clock and trying to wear you down when they know you don't have as many perimeter creators with the amount of guys we've had out. But to a certain extent, you need to try and persevere through it. And I think they could have done a better job of late.
From what we've seen so far this season, I do not believe that Mark Williams has been enough to be you can't pay him like a good starting center on a good team.
What would you offer him?
Technically, that's what he is, right? For those listening, the Suns are pretty good this year, and he's their starting center.
And he's also, by the way, the Suns are 9th in defensive rating as of today. Now, statistically, that is, you could literally say that's more thanks to Oso.
It is. I mean, that's what the numbers say.
But Mark Williams is the starting center on the 9th best defense in the NBA.
Right.
Here's one thing I wanted to say, too. Mark Williams has, the defensive rating is worse with him on the floor compared to Oso. He is also having the most deflections of his career. He is occasionally able to switch out onto the perimeter, very occasionally compared to Oso, but they are willing to have him play up high and break up passing lanes in a way that just isn't true of there are centers who suck at the rim, but they also can't move their feet at all. And Mark Williams is not that. I don't think he is. He's not like Nikola Vucevic or something, right? Where he's just a complete traffic cone and there's no hope of being able to build a good defense around him, because if that were the case, then they wouldn't be, top half of the league in defense. I don't think he's worthy of being paid like a good starting center, because in my opinion, he's not. Answer my question. What's your offer to Mark Williams?
The context of that matters, though, right? Here's what I'd say. Can you pay him $20 million a year? I wouldn't. I get worried. Here's the way I would question it. Here's what's really sticking in my head. What if his best role is like a good backup center? What if that's what he is? It's tough in this specific team because the Suns have a very good backup center by the numbers in Oso Ighodaro so far this season. He's just juiced all of the Suns' numbers every moment he's on the floor. And he's still too small to start. You can't really start Oso. Although I will say in the Portland game, Jordan Ott called a timeout 2 minutes, basically just over 2 minutes into the third quarter, and pulled Mark Williams and put Oso in. It's the fastest I've ever seen him do that in a game, and it just was kind of fascinating to see. So $15 million, and we're saying if he's $15 million, that still makes me a little nervous.
Yeah, I would put him there. That to me is the Gafford contract.
Gafford's just better.
I don't think Gafford's. I don't think
Gafford's rim protection numbers are good, and he gets blocks at the rim.
Yeah, I know, and he also doesn't run the floor like Mark Williams says. I mean, Gafford is good at certain things, but he plays 22 minutes a game.
Yeah,
as a starting center. I'm not saying that it's a perfect comparison. I think that's the closest comp for Mark Williams right now is Daniel Gafford-ish, which makes you a $15 million a year guy, not a $20 million a year guy. And it's hard because, in a perfect world, you say, this is Matt Ishbia's money. It's not our money. Who cares? Pay them all. But if you pay Mark Williams too much, it impacts your ability to keep Colin Gillespie. It impacts your ability to keep Jordan Goodwin. So, in this case, I actually do think there's only so much money to go around for the three of these guys if you want to avoid being in apron hell yet again.
24 games left in the season. I think this is why we're having this conversation now. I've been concerned about Mark Williams for a while now. But he has an opportunity to play better. He has an opportunity to get better. He has an opportunity to show growth defensively in this season. But that opportunity has gone down dramatically. It's a third, less than a third of the season left so far for him. So he's got to show it soon for the Suns to make a decision. The reason his contract is concerning as far as the future of this team is because the Suns traded 2 first-round picks for him, the last 2 picks that they could trade until they open on up in 2032 or 2033 or whatever it is in the future. They don't have any more, bullets in that gun to try and get more assets for this team to pull the trigger on. they use them on Mark Williams, so they need him to be good. Or what I don't want is them to feel like in for a penny, in for a pound, we'll just pay him what a starting center gets. They can't do that. There is a version of this where they cut bait. I don't know what that would be. Maybe they find a trade. Grayson Allen has become increasingly important for this team, so it's hard to say that they can trade Grayson Allen for a center, but maybe they find a trade outside of that and find a starting center that way. Maybe they believe in Malawach by the end of the season enough to start Oso and play Malawach 20 minutes a game or whatever. I don't see that happening. But it's really difficult for me to say that I would be really happy with this team if they went into next season with Mark Williams as their starting center based on what I've seen this season.
I just want to say, go ahead. I cut you off.
No, it's it. That's really it. Because I'm not gonna preclude the possibility of him dramatically improving even next season. That's still possible.
Yeah,
he could just get better. But this season has not given me a lot of confidence in him being good enough to be a starting center defensively. I actually do think offensively he is. The Suns could involve him more. They could give him more opportunities.
Is.
If they had a really good point guard, he would average 5 more points a game or whatever. But defensively is where my concern is.
This is my last thing I'm going to say, and then we have to move on because 30 minutes on just Mark Williams is enough. And we have other stats to get to. This is kind of okay, I know they traded multiple picks and whatever. In my mind, Mark Williams was always the placeholder to get you ideally to the point where you hand the baton off to Kaman Malawach, right? Because otherwise, why are you drafting Kaman Malawach 10th overall? Now, who knows if it ends up turning out that way 2 or 3 years from now, but Mark Williams was never, in my mind at least, intended to be. It would be great if he still could be. Never necessarily intended to be the Suns starting center for half a decade. So, in terms of what they traded, I'm not thinking about that too much on a day-to-day. He's mostly met expectations for me, I would say, just by virtue of him being on the floor. That's him meeting expectations. Offensively, I'm still happy with what we've gotten. I only would start to sour on the whole experience a little bit if, to your point, they say, okay, Mark Williams, here's $22 million a year that we feel he just can't live up to.
And $15 million a year. And by the way, I know that's that's truthfully what he's earned so far in his career. We could say any more than that would feel like a lot, and maybe he'll earn more. What if they get to the playoffs and he has an amazing playoff series? That's where you really earn money.
Yeah,
that's where you really find a way to pad your pockets. But there's still, I'm going to say for me right now, there's still some level of concern, even with that much money, that contract becomes difficult to trade if knock on wood, any of the injury concerns come back next season, or if players just clearly outplay him in a way that is really disappointing. So the good news for him, he works hard, he tries hard. There's no effort issues. Now, we can see how that looks in future years, or how the conversation goes when it comes to a contract, when you're saying, hey, we need you to run really hard even when you're not getting the ball, and then he's like, well, then pay me for that. I understand that too. There's some element of that built into this. Yeah, but $15 million a year, don't get me wrong, still a lot of money for a guy who's had injury concerns his entire career. But
I would never say that that's an unmovable amount of money, though. Guys in the 10 to 20 range these days especially get moved all the time.
They get moved all the time, but often for bad contracts as well, right? It's sure. That's just how it works. So I guess it's less unmovable and more, can the Suns find a way to use these contracts to improve? There's just such small margin for error for the Suns because of that $20 million of Bradley Beal money sitting in the books.
Big thanks to our sponsor, BetterHelp, for partnering with us for this important conversation about mental health.
This is Steve Smith here, former NFL wide receiver and host of the 89 show on YouTube. So having a counselor and working with BetterHelp, that gives you an opportunity to really start to unpack. But people don't understand, when you unpack things, you also open up a box that you're not always sure what's inside. So I think that's why seeing a professional is extremely important. If you need someone to open up to, visit BetterHelp. That's betterhelp.com/89 to get started.
Well, that's why you need guys to outplay their contract value. Is it even my turn for a stat? Whose turn is it? We haven't
Yeah,
we've been talking about Mark Williams.
I had Mark Williams stat, so yeah, it's your turn.
Okay, so let's talk about a guy who I think actually is. Let's turn this in a positive direction. Grayson Allen. I want to talk about Grayson Allen a little bit. Now, I know he's out right now for the right knee injury management, just for a game or two, it seems. But Grayson Allen had 27 points in the double OT win against Orlando, with the exception of the Jalen Green game winner. Grayson Allen was miraculously, somehow, the engine of the Suns offense for both of the double overtimes and the end of the fourth quarter.
In his first game back from an injury, too.
Right. Was it a garbage offense? Yes. Was that Grayson Allen's fault? No, absolutely not. Grayson Allen was like the only reason we won that game. And even before he got injured, I would also point out, in his last 3 games before injury, he scored 21, 24, and 23 points. He is up to 17.3 points per game, 3.9 assists. He's obviously jacking up a ton of threes. What I wanted to point out specifically, though, here's the stat, is that Grayson Allen is shooting 68% in the restricted area this season. Is this a surprising number to you?
Yeah, that is, yeah. Is Mark Williams guarding him? Just kidding.
Come on, man. Let it go. Devin Booker is shooting 68% in the restricted area this season. Grayson Allen is shooting 68%. The fact that those two guys are in the same place when they get all the way to the rim is remarkable. It is evidence of a true improvement in Grayson's game, which at his age, and also like the fact that, Grayson has 2 more years left on this big contract extension that he signed with the Suns. So he's not in like a contract year where he's especially motivated to, has to get the next contract right now, right? Like this blow up that he's had has sort of come out of nowhere to go from a season where really a lot of us were quite disappointed in Grayson last year, only averaged 10.5 points per game. He came off the bench most of those games. To this year, I know he hasn't been available all the time, but when he's had to start, has really taken on both a scoring and a playmaking responsibility beyond what he should have to, and yet has flourished. Well, maybe not flourished, but he's survived in that role. So 68%.
This is his best season.
Easily.
He's flourished as far as I'm concerned. As far as I'm concerned.
And this is why I wanted to bring it up, because last year we were talking about, is Grayson even tradable on that contract? Because
I never thought that.
Well, plenty of people said it in the Discord, at least. He's one of those guys making $16-17 million a year. And now he's averaging 17-4 on good efficiency. And apparently he's a 70% guy at the rim, 68%, but we're rounding up. And the reason he can do that, by the way, the reason I really wanted to bring this up, I get so much joy, almost as much joy as I get from like some of Oso's highlights. The Grayson Allen deceleration step.
Yeah, it's great.
Has become like, if I were going to put my Zach Lowe goggles on or whatever and say like, this is the reason to watch the Suns. This is one of the best things about the Suns this season, and is really where his improvement at the rim comes from. I think Grayson Allen understands that all that matters at the end of the day is change of speed, change of pace when you're trying to juke guys out, and going fast to slow can be just as effective as going slow to fast. Now that he's figured that out, he's not at the point where he can get grift his way to 8 free throws a game or whatever. Maybe that's the next step that comes next year and he becomes a 25 point per game scorer. But at least for now, Grayson can drive, doesn't have the quickest first step, doesn't have the ability to necessarily blow by anybody. But if he does have that little bit of acceleration, that little bit of head of steam, he can decelerate at the last second and then just Euro his way to the rim. And he's been really effective at that. I'm not going to pretend like that's ever going to be more important to his offensive game than shooting. Obviously, everyone knows he's a shooter, and his reputation as a shooter is now allowing him to unlock the inside of his game a little bit. But I'm just happy to see him figure it out, honestly.
It's just another reason why Bud is a criminal, man. How could you not get something good out of Grayson? And by the way, he didn't get something good out of Grayson really in Milwaukee either. 10.4 points per game is what Grayson averaged in Milwaukee, 22-23. then 13.5 here, where he shot 46% from 3 under Frank Vogel, and then back down to 10.6 with Bud, and now he's up to 17.3. And I think what's really kind of amazing about Grayson, we're calling it his best season. It's another example of why efficiency, although important, is not the most important thing in the NBA anymore. Looking at his three-point percentage in the last few years, let's start 2021 when he was in Memphis. 39%, 41%, 39, well, we'll say 40%, 46% under Vogel, 42.6% last year. But this year, 36%. And we go by the three-pointers attempted, it's basically 5 per season in the previous 5 seasons. This year, 9.2.
Mm-hmm.
He's just shooting so many threes and shooting so many audacious threes. And he deserves real credit for just how much he's changed his game in order to fit into what Jordan Ott is asking him to do, because he's sacrificing essentially his three-point percentage, which is still good for the amount of three-pointers he's shooting, but he's sacrificing what would be considered great efficiency to be good efficiency, but adding 7 points per game to it in order to do that. And that's dramatic. That's been vital for the Suns' success so far this year. And you could see how much he was missing yesterday in Portland, by the way, or against Portland.
While also, by the way, averaging, the highest assists per game of his career, the highest steals per game of his career. I was also going to mention the fact Grayson's not going to lock anyone down. And yeah, the Suns are going to be hurting, missing Jordan Goodwin and Dillon Brooks with guys on the perimeter, but he's been really solid defensively. I don't put him in the Royce O'Neal. I don't put him in the Royce O'Neal bucket. He's not showing up in that same
than that. Yeah,
he's not showing up in that same blow by stat.
He won't get the steals the way Royce does, though.
He's averaging 1.5 a game.
I mean, that's pretty good. Yeah,
that's a lot. He doesn't. He does hustle. I don't know. Grayson is weird because sometimes he does hustle and sometimes he doesn't. And I guess I haven't really thought about
transition.
Why that would be. Yeah.
And the Suns have really good transition defense for a team that gets as many offensive rebounds as they do, and Grayson's one of the reasons why.
I just think we're at a point with him where he just doesn't have an obvious flaw to his game. Of course, you don't expect him to be your the second or third leading scorer on a really good team in the long term. But if this is who Grayson could be for the next 2 years, the Suns have him under contract for 2 more years. If he can continue to be a 15-ish points, 4-ish assists guy, just doing his thing, playing efficient basketball and holding up on the defensive end for less than $20 million, that's a really good value proposition right there. So shout out to Grayson. I think Suns fans have underrated him throughout his tenure, and I understand why. It's because he's been on a couple of really weird and frankly miserable teams between Frank Vogel and Mike Budenholzer. But I think we're turning it around now, and we should recognize that he's been a part of that.
All right. Here's one. Jordan Ott, after the game, talked about getting called from illegal screens. Did you happen to see him talk about this?
I saw that he did, and I didn't listen to what he said. What did he say?
He was very upset. He talked about the Suns getting called for screens that other teams don't get called for, including Portland, saying Portland was doing the same stuff and not getting called for it. He mentioned that they have sent footage to the NBA about this. And he even said different crew, same result for this game, in essentially saying that the Suns are getting called for offensive fouls on illegal screens that other teams are not getting called for. And he's unsure why the Suns are essentially being targeted for that. My stat is the Phoenix Suns have been called for the most offensive fouls of any team in the NBA so far this season.
Wow. I would have thought to look this up.
119 offensive fouls total this season, which is a lot. There's only 8 teams with over 100, and the Suns have 119. The next most are the Charlotte Hornets, the New York Knicks, the Indiana Pacers, and the Utah Jazz. That's right. 3 out of the 5 teams in this stat are bottom feeder garbage teams. Well, Charlotte's been better, but Indiana Pacers, Utah Jazz, bad, tanking teams. And the Knicks, which is kind of interesting to see the Knicks there.
Who commits the most?
On the team?
Yeah, do you have that?
I don't have the player stats for that. No, actually I do. I looked it up. Well, I don't have it in front of me, but I looked it up. It's Mark Williams.
Okay, I guess that makes sense.
It's always
the guys who set the
screens.
screens.
Yeah, exactly.
But here, let me look.
Mark Williams, I believe it's Mark Williams. I can actually pull it up right here too, but it's Mark Williams and Oso Ighodaro, I believe, are the most in that stat. Now, I agree
Brooks
with
has
him.
19, which is not surprising, frankly.
Mm-hmm. I do agree with him that that the Suns get called for some. That we mentioned the Malawatch one earlier in this podcast. Sometimes the teams get called for some that other teams are not getting called for. And I don't know that there's any solution for this. It's just really one of those things to complain about. But I was like, it does feel like the Suns are getting a lot of offensive foul calls. I'm going to look up where they rank in the NBA, and it was at the top.
So Mark Williams leads the team with 20, but of course in 1,200 minutes. So what is that? 1 in every 60 minutes or so for Mark Williams. By comparison, Nick Richards has 10. And he only played 250 minutes this year. So 1 every 25 minutes for Nick Richards versus 1 in every 60 for Mark Williams. Man, Nick Richards was really bad.
Yeah.
Is he playing well now, though, for Chicago?
I don't know. I don't need to, yeah.
I'm looking it up.
No,
you
he
can
has
keep talking.
10
I'm
offensive fouls in Chicago already. Nick Richards. Because for some reason that shows up here on.
You're looking at that already?
Oh wait, no, I'm not. I'm sorry. He has 10 here. Yeah, you're right.
He has 3. He's scoring. Okay.
He's scoring his opportunity there. He
you.
Shot a couple threes.
9 points a game. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, he gets minutes, but it's just one of those things where the Suns need to get called for it less, and if that means adjusting how they play, yes. It was really interesting to hear Jordan Ott talk about it, by the way, because he said Portland plays in a drop. They play in kind of a deep drop. And when a team plays in a drop, you really have to stick the screen in order to get any space offensively, which is right. Because if the defender can get around the screen really easily, it makes it really easy to defend. So when you're in a drop, the screen has to hit. And he said, and these guys are just falling on the screen and getting the calls. And that's exactly what happened multiple times in that game where a guy was getting screened. They just fell. And then they got the calls both of those times. And were the screens, if you watch them in slow motion, moving a little bit? Yeah. But if you watch every screen in slow motion, that happens all the time. It's just what happens all the time.
It's a moving sport. Like the concept of a perfectly still screen is kind of, I don't know that exists. The Suns, I mean, what he's saying there, talking about Portland being in a deep drop and how you need to stick the screens, right? It's because of how reliant our offense right now is from the pull-up threes. You need Jalen Green and Colin Gillespie, especially Grayson Allen too when he plays again, to be able to come around those screens and create offense. Because otherwise, if a team is in a deep drop, your ability to penetrate through more traditional methods and get the defense to collapse, it's going to be difficult right now without Devin Booker. So if those continue to be called on us, you've got a guy like Colin Gillespie out there who can make 5, 6, 7 of those pull-up threes a game, but you're taking away his ability to create offense there. So I understand his frustration.
Yeah. All right, we're already at an hour here, so what do you got? Let's go through it.
All right, we'll speed him up a little bit.
I only have one more, so.
Okay, Jalen Green, let's do a real quick
That's what I have,
thing.
too, is my last one.
Okay, perfect. So Jalen Green's only played 10 games so far. I want to put that out as a caveat because...
That's why I saved mine for last, too. It felt tough to really pick on him, but yeah.
I don't think that there are any huge sweeping generalizations we can take. Big reason why that is for me is just because a bunch of these 10 games have been without Devin Booker or other guys, and so Jalen's just not able to play exactly in the way that we're hoping he can eventually when everyone's healthy, but of course, who knows if everyone will eventually be healthy, so it's tough. I'm going to take the glass half full approach.
Okay.
To my stat, okay?
Then I'll counter
Jalen Green. Yeah, and then you can counter that with being a giant asshole today,
Yeah.
which apparently you are. 175 minutes, excluding garbage time so far for Jalen Green, okay? In those 175 minutes, the Suns have a 99 defensive rating. I think this is notable.
It's not.
What do you
yes,
think?
I agree.
I think it is notable that the Suns have a stellar defensive rating in a limited sample size with Jalen Green, where everyone's big question was, well, everyone had a bunch of questions, to be honest, but one of the big questions was, can he play defense? Is he going to make the defense way worse? Because he's going to be this really tiny liability who you have to hide, or is going to be constantly giving up driving lanes, yada, yada. Again, 175 minutes, small sample size. And I'll tell you right now that 3-point luck and variance is part of this, right? Part of it is just teams missing threes, and that's not always going to happen.
You can adjust, in Data Baller, you can adjust for 3-point luck. Now, it's not perfect, right, when you adjust for that, but the defensive rating with him on the floor, I did that today, is still very good, even if you adjust for 3-point luck.
Right, and so that's just where I wanted to start here. I know you're going to talk about the offense, and sure, we could talk about his offense. Defensively, I think we need to note that through 10 games, Jalen Green looks active.
I agree. Off the ball, he's doing
fairly,
good stuff, I think. Yeah,
fairly connected to the rest of the team within their scheme. I really haven't noticed much slippage.
I agree, especially if you compare it to like a couple of his early games before his injury, where he looked just a little bit lost. He seems to know where he needs to be now, and he's doing good stuff like activity-wise off the ball, generated a couple turnovers even for the Suns in the last few games. And yeah, I think his defense has been what it can be so far, and it can get even better. So that's good news that defensively you can't really find a lot there to complain about. Offensively, though...
It's been fun. We didn't even talk about it. 6 for 26 against Orlando. Just such a funny game.
I don't even think that game was... it's weird for me where I don't even think that game was that bad. Because I don't know. It's like one of those things where, yes, it was bad because he missed a ton of shots. But as you know, and as people who listen to this podcast for a long time know, that you can't evaluate individual games based on shooting alone. You just can't. And I believe that. You have to judge the offense not based on whether or not the shots went in. It's based on whether or not they were good shots and whether or not the decisions that were made that led to those shots were good. And I don't even think that game was that bad for him. But here's what I'll say. Without Devin Booker on the floor, Jalen Green's played 112 minutes without Devin Booker on the floor. So, caveat, small sample size. The Suns have a 101.3 offensive rating in those minutes. Not only would that be the worst offense in the NBA so far this year, that would be the worst offense in the NBA 10 years ago. You know? That's really bad.
That's 2011 Gerald Henderson, Charlotte Bobcats level. Like what's the comparison?
Yeah,
there?
That's a good way of thinking about it. And here's the reason I bring it up. The Suns have been good offensively without Devin Booker on the floor previous to Jalen Green being back. Now, a lot more context goes into that. Grayson Allen's missed games. Now Dillon Brooks is missing games. Jordan Goodwin's going to miss games and missed one game at least. There are guys who juice the offense with the things that they do to help the Suns, and Jalen Green has had the misfortune of not being able to play much with those guys so far this year. So that context still matters. But what I will say is when he's on the ball, he does not, at least so far this season, have any instincts that a point guard has. He just does not play like a point guard.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning he's not looking for other guys. He's not running the offense in the way that a point guard does. He's not getting other guys involved. The other thing, he's not getting off the ball quick enough. And I know that sounds counterproductive, but Devin Booker does it. You get off, you do one thing to start the ball rotations, and then you get off the ball. And you get off the ball so that the ball finds its way to an open shooter, which could end up being him at the end of that too. And he's not doing that so far this season. He can get a lot better. This is, to me, more than anything, this is one of those stats where I'm keeping an eye on this. It's not indicative of what it's going to be in the future. It's just one thing that you have to notice because the offense with him on the floor and Devin Booker not on the floor has been god-awful so far this season in all of the minutes he's played so far. There's like another thing point guard-wise, right, where the Suns get a rebound, they turn the ball over, now they're coming back offensively. Traditionally, this season, whoever gets the ball in that scenario, unless it's Mark Williams, basically, just gets the ball down the floor as quickly as possible. And then they start their offense from there. That means if Ryan Dunn catches the ball and Devin Booker's on the floor, most of the time, he's not waiting for Ryan Dunn to pass him the ball. He's just running down into the corner, and then they're starting a zoom action with Devin Booker running off the ball to catch the ball. But with Jalen Green so far, he's been waiting for the ball in those scenarios, and he's been dribbling the ball down himself. He doesn't need to do that. And that's something I feel like they can fix pretty quickly here. He just doesn't need to be the guy that dribbles the ball down every time in transition or after rebounds or whatever. Just let somebody else do it, get off the ball, find a way to the ball then again, and then maybe get off the ball a little quicker again.
Yeah, it's been frustrating because a lot of those minutes where he's not playing with Booker, he is sharing the floor often with Colin Gillespie, who does have point guard instincts. And I'm not saying that Gillespie needs to have the ball in his hands all the time, although I do think he's a better decision maker on the ball. But there needs to be more of a balance when Jalen's on the court, right? Like even in a fully healthy landscape with the Suns, right? My vision for Jalen Green was never, okay, Devin Booker is now off the floor for these 6 minutes, so it's let Jalen cook every possession for the next 6 minutes, right?
Which is there's been a lot of ISOs in the last 2 games.
That's the Ime Udoka Houston Rockets ball that we kind of need to knock out of him,
exactly,
and have him understand that there just needs to be more of a give or take to his offense now, and we haven't seen it so far. I'm giving him a pass for the first 10 games because it has to be so confusing, not only for him to have to come back and trust his body again because of all these weird nagging injuries that he hasn't had throughout his career, but also that other guys are missing and he knows he just needs to create. So it's tough. But yeah, I haven't been overly impressed. The one exception is like, man, that guy, his first step is just the fastest first step you've ever seen. That's like the where you get the wow factor with Jalen Green. He had the one dunk was that against Portland?
It was. I was there.
Or Orlando.
Yeah, that was a fun
one. Portland in transition. That was early on in the game before it became a terrible game. That was an incredible dunk, but also just a couple moments that he had isoing against Paolo in the Orlando game where he shook Paolo out of his shoes and just he was gone. And the way that he's able to shift the defense in those moments is really incredible. It's not going to be every possession, but when it does happen, it's fun to watch.
With guys that are that athletic, it can actually be a downside for some of them because getting to the spots beyond the first line of defense is step one. It's what you do next that can trigger a good offense. And that's what really matters. And sometimes that means making the really easy pass. Sometimes that means making the skip pass, which is a little bit harder. And that's something Devin Booker is very good at. Once he gets by that first line of defense, if he can get to the rim and score himself, he should. But he shouldn't force it because his at-rim shooting so far this season has been very bad because he's forcing it at the rim a little bit so far this season. You need to get off the ball a little quicker and let the offense do its thing, and it will find the right guy. This team has done a good job at finding the right guy in that scenario, and you have to trust that they're going to do that. And, I do think he will. Like, I think Jordan Ott knows all these things, right? I'm not saying he's not listening to this podcast taking notes. You know what I mean? He knows all of these things. He's going to get to him, and they're going to find ways to better use him within this offense. But the instincts have to be there, and he has to do them relatively quickly for this offense to work. An extra half a second is what leads to 77 points in a game, which it did in Portland. So there's a lot there, and there's a lot that the Suns could do a really good job with, but they need to find a way to tap into it when Devin Booker's not on the floor. Because I will say, outside of that, when Devin Booker is on the floor with Jalen Green so far, the offense has been very good. So they'll find ways to do that, but you can really get sunk by the minutes without him if you're not doing it right. So we need to see it work better in those minutes. You want to do one more? You want to save it? Because I know we're already over an hour here.
Well, I could save it for Patreon in a couple days, but we also will have more games to talk about.
All right, if it's relevant now, let's do it. We'll just do it quickly.
Okay. I was just going to say Oso and Ryan Dunn are tied in scoring per game. That's my last stat.
No.
Did you think that we would be here at the start of the season?
No.
Especially the way I think this is both a positive.
You're talking to
this is a beautiful stat. In my opinion,
right.
It's beautiful because it's both positive and negative.
You're talking to a rare Oso believer, I think. We both believed in him before the season, so I guess that I would have had times where I say I do believe in Oso.
We both believed in him, sort of, but also I remember early November saying I was saying in early November on the podcast, I don't know if Oso's
you really
an NBA
killed
player.
him for a while there, yeah.
So I'm willing to admit that I was wrong there.
Ryan Dunn also scored in the last game, dropped below his 3-point percentage from last year by 0.01% now as well.
So no.
He's now shooting
here it is.
worse from the 3-point line than last year.
Oso in 3 of the last 5 games has now scored 10 points. That's big for a guy who just doesn't shoot that much.
Yeah.
And increasingly is going at guys for contact. I feel like he's not getting a lot of the calls yet, but the calls are going to come eventually if Oso keeps driving with some of the aggression that we've seen from him lately. And again, I'm going to stress this point again and again. Who is going to make the 10-minute highlight compilation of all of Oso's best plays this year? Because that shit is going to make him look like an all-star.
Mm-hmm.
His best highlights this year have been flawless. Meanwhile, Ryan Dunn in the month of February is shooting 30% from deep and 20% from the free throw line. He is 2 for his last 10 from the free throw line. And it's a really, really tough time to be a Ryan Dunn believer. He's going to have a ton of opportunity with Dillon Brooks out, you would think, just because he has to. But it's been a really hard week for him. Like, we were talking about how he was in the doghouse there for a while. Why isn't he playing? Well, now, last several games, he's played upwards of 20 minutes because he's had to. And actually, his defense was really good in the Orlando game, but has just been a total zero offensively for a while.
He had moments in the Portland game, too, I thought, where his defense really clicked. He had bad moments, too, but he had some good moments.
Rasheer Fleming, I'm not going to say he's been great or anything, but if he's listening, there are minutes for him. He could seize them.
There are minutes even if Ryan Dunn is playing. Because, like, yeah, what if they play Paolo again? You know? Like, they're going to need someone to guard those guys. Oso, not afraid of shooting free throws. In the last 10 games, has only shot 5. But was 4 for 5 in those. So, you know, like, I do think part of what it is in his driving to the rim, it's about the fear of having to shoot free throws if they just hammer him. And it just seems to be less afraid of that lately. So hopefully that's a good sign for the future. That was a good one. I really hope Ryan Dunn puts it together because, like, right now they need him more than ever. We really need a good stretch from Ryan right now. So I'm hoping that he finds a way to put it together over this next stretch of 10 or so games. And we come back on this podcast and we can say good things about him. But shout out to Oso, who's been good. Flawed player, but, like, found a way to be effective with those flaws, which is really impressive. Anything else?
I guess that's going to be it for now.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for listening to this one. If you want to hear an extra podcast this week, patreon.com/thetimeline for an extra podcast. And join us on our Discord by joining our Patreon there. We appreciate you, and we'll be back very soon.